From the Foundation Studio right here on Biloxi's Back Bay, I want to welcome you to Super Talk Outdoors, where we celebrate every single Monday at lunchtime the world-class outdoors of the state of Mississippi, because we are the capital of the outdoors in America. I want to thank you for joining us on the powerful Super Talk Mississippi Radio Network, or on Super Talk TV at C Spire TV, but you may be watching the show on YouTube or Facebook, or listening on your favorite podcast. With that said, it's August the 14th, 2023. I went outside in coastal Mississippi, looking out over Back Bay this morning, 82 degrees. It wasn't too bad, but it got hot pretty quick. It's supposed to be sort of a heat index of around 118 degrees today. Wow. It's that time of year, but I think it's been one of the longest stretches of hot weather that I can remember. Hey, by the way, I want you to remember that the views on this show are mine, not those of the foundation. So when it comes to outdoors and outdoors issues like we're going to be talking about today, for a matter of fact, you can count on me to say what needs to be said. And I want you to know that I'm honored. I'm really honored to be in this chair. So, when I think about hunting, I think about enjoying the outdoors with my kids and my grandkids. I think about teaching them the culture of safety, whether it be in the boat, in the backwaters of coastal Mississippi, or offshore, or at the hunting camp up in the Mississippi Delta. I know that you think the same thing. You've got to appreciate the fact that you get to spend so much wonderful time with kids and grandkids in the outdoors. But safety's part of it. We teach our kids and our grandkids that there is no margin for error. And we teach them about ethics and the outdoors and how to really enjoy the outdoors. And they take those lessons with them way into their adulthood. Safety's everything. I think about the time that I've celebrated about the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks and the Foundation's commitment to kids. The result of the work they've done over the years have introduced thousands of kids to archery programs and gun safety programs, shooting clays. Kids have been brought to the outdoors that would have never been brought to the outdoors. They developed a passion for the outdoors, whereas they may not have ever seen that because, either a family member or whatever, a friend has not introduced that to them. It wasn't part of their heritage in their family. I think about the time I spend with my friend Waldo Cleland of the Ames programs, archery in Mississippi schools, or with Gary Holcomb from the Mississippi Scholastic Shooting Program, and the long list of others, both employed by the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, and volunteers that are incredibly committed to introducing kids to the outdoors in Mississippi. Gosh, we've had so much success. In my multiple conversations here on Super Talk Outdoors with Waldo, we've talked about the participation statewide in the archery programs and how it has brought more than 80,000 kids. Think about that for a second. 80,000 kids to archery programs in the state. It's one of the, if you think about it just on a per capita basis, there are more kids involved in archery than in extracurricular youth programs in Mississippi than any other sports. I mean, it's hard to get your head around, but that's how successful this program has been. The Ames program in Mississippi is one of the most successful in the nation. In fact, it is a model for the nation. It's incredible. And by the way, Waldo's leadership of that through his work at the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks has been terrific over the past, I think maybe now more than 17 years. I think about the conversations I've had with Gary Holcomb, and just had him on the show this past April to talk about the Mississippi Scholastic Shooting Program. And I wanted to share something with you. Hundreds of kids have been going through this program each year. This is from the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks website. The Mississippi Scholastic Shooting Program is a team-based youth development program that uses the shotgun sports of five-stand, skeet, and sporting clays to instill life skills such as discipline, safety, teamwork, ethics, self-confidence, and other life values. The program utilizes these disciplines to teach hunting skills through the safe use of hunting equipment, including firearms, and their relationship to hunting solutions. And it goes on from there. I mean, but the bottom line is we've had amazing progress in this state to teach ethical safe engagement in the outdoors. And we have a lot to be proud of as it relates to that. But now, unfortunately, the U.S. Department of Education recently announced funding cuts to hunter education and archery and other outdoor programs in schools nationwide. Wow, they don't get it. And this is not typically a political program, but unfortunately, an agenda is driving their efforts. And, if they were to look inside Mississippians, they would see that they were incredibly misguided. But with all that said, I decided to invite my friend back to SuperTalk Outdoors, Todd Aikens, who's the Vice President of Governmental Affairs for the Sportsman Alliance. And we've had great visits here on SuperTalk Outdoors, and he's now locked on. They are now locked on to this issue. Without any further ado, let me welcome my friend Todd back to SuperTalk Outdoors.
Good morning, Ricky. It's great to see you again. It's really fantastic to hear about Mississippi, I got to tell you, because at the end of the day, you're exactly right. Tens of thousands of young people. I look back, I've got a lot of gray hair, but I look back at my own memories of these fantastic activities that I was introduced to as a child, as a young person. And now we have a department that's taking this kind of anti-gun mentality, Department of Education, that is to its extreme. It is beyond unfortunate, because we're talking about programs that not only teach these important skills, they introduce young people to this way of life that supports conservation everywhere in this country. It is beyond belief. It is surprising, even in today's highly charged political world, that the Department of Education would take this position and kind of reduce the ability of these schools to provide such programs. It's absolutely incredible. I will say real quick, because I need to clarify for folks who are listening, this is not hunter education or archery programs that are funded by the Pittman-Robertson excise tax program. These are Department of Education funds that are utilized for a host of physical education endeavors, which include, in schools that offer it, hunter education and archery and the shooting sports. So a lot of folks say, wait, they can't touch Pittman-Robertson, and thank God that's absolutely true. This is about extra money, $1 billion, in fact, that the schools nationwide can utilize for various programs, and many, including in Mississippi, say we're going to do hunter education and archery and shooting sports, etc.
Also, as I pointed out, the foundation has contributed a great amount of money in this, and obviously they're not forbidding contributions from being made. They're just saying that U.S. Department of Education funds will not be used for this purpose. And what's interesting, of course, you guys, and we're going to get into some of the details of this here shortly, but the Sportsman Alliance has spent a tremendous amount of energy over many years helping to keep top of mind the role that hunters and outdoorsmen play in conservation. And if you're a true conservationist, you can't be a true conservationist without appreciating the role that hunters play. And so teaching our kids to have sort of understand the ethical aspect of conservation and outdoorsmanship, you can't separate these things, can you?
You can't. And we can't even, it's one of those things where you can't believe a world that existed without this structure in place, where hunters, anglers, trappers, outdoorsmen generally have contributed billions and billions of dollars for the good of all of Americans, whether or not they hunt, fish, or trap, or anything else for that matter, for the good of all wildlife. So we can't even imagine a system. We can't envision it. So you can, as you say, you cannot be a conservationist without having a full appreciation of how important these people are to this ultimate equation.
Hey, so we're going to get into the details of what exactly is up here. You guys are in the process of taking legal action, and we're going to get into all of that. But let's remind people what the Sportsman's Alliance is.
Sure. I mean, at the end of the day, there are a lot of organizations that people are members of, and I say get engaged, right? Be engaged with an organization so you're aware of what's happening all around us, not just in a wonderful place like Mississippi, but throughout the country. We're a little bit different than many groups. That is our first mission is to protect the individuals who engage in these activities. So as you say, we're going to talk about the details of how we're getting legally involved in trying to push back the Department of Education and what it's doing. But our focus is on the people that do these things. Our focus is on the young men and women that engage in, that have the opportunity to have these hunter education programs, these archery programs, these shooting sports programs within their schools. We fight for the individuals first and foremost because we recognize they're the linchpin to all of this wonderful success we've had.
So we'll get into the detail of what the Department of Education is up to when we get on the other side, when we continue our conversation with Todd Atkins, the Vice President of Governmental Affairs for the Sportsmen's Alliance. We'll see you after this break.
Mississippi.
Leading the conversation on Mississippi's outdoors. It's Super Talk Outdoors with Ricky Matthews on Super Talk Mississippi.
Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors as we listen to my friend Steve Azar. One Mississippi, the theme song for Super Talk Outdoors, and a new state song for Mississippi. I just got a note from Steve just a second ago talking about his son, Strack, who has a wonderful movie out that's getting extraordinarily well received called Binality. You ought to look it up. It actually was filmed in the Mississippi Delta, and it is a terrific movie. Strack, like his dad, is a really, really talented dude. Okay, let's get back to my friend Todd Atkins. He's the Vice President of Governmental Affairs for the Sportsmen's Alliance. This is a national organization. It was founded back in the 1970s, and it's all about protecting hunters and fishermen and trappers and future generations of us, and protecting our ability and to be able to go do the things that we love to do in the outdoors. Todd, so look, there's a lot of politics wrapped up in this U.S. Department of Education move, but essentially what have they done and what's the reaction to it been?
So it kind of broke in the news that the department issued guidance to school systems, to individual schools. Everybody became aware of it fairly rapidly that, look, at the end of the day, these funds that we've set aside as a result of that bipartisan Safer Communities Act cannot be utilized for the following things. That is, these hunter education, archery programs, shooting sports programs, etc. And there's a lesson there at the end of the day. A lot of times when folks say, well, that's a type of gun control I can live with, the tentacles of gun control always reach a lot deeper than you immediately realize, and this is a good instance where that's the case. So they announced through guidance that, hey, we're going to withhold funds if you utilize these funds for these types of programs. That broke just about a couple weeks ago, and we've been formulating a plan ever since. We knew we had to challenge this immediately and get this fixed. We know that Congress ultimately has to fix this problem because we can't trust Department of Education to reinterpret things. However, having said that, just last Friday, a few days ago, we, along with Safari Club International, sent to the Department of Education a demand letter. It's what's known as a demand letter. We are going to sue you unless you straighten this mess out. And we said, you can do that very clearly by issuing for the public to see your new guidance that these funds will not be withheld for the following programs. Simultaneously, we've asked our members and supporters, reach out to your member of Congress, reach out to your U.S. senators, let them know we have got to fix this problem. We believe because that gun control bill was passed with bipartisan support, the problem should be identified by everybody at the party. This is a problem. There was no intention on behalf of anybody to do this type of thing with these funds, that is, restrict hunter education and archery programs. So we remain hopeful, as long as everybody wakes up and lets folks know we want this fixed, that Congress will in fact fix it. But in the meantime, we have planned this lawsuit against the Department of Education to kind of stop them in their tracks, at least for the day.
Hey Todd, do you think you may not have all the information you should have at this stage of the game? Maybe you'll get more of that as this thing progresses. But is this a misguided bureaucrat? Is this some underlying issue? You said around gun control could be anti-hunter, but do we really know sort of where this is coming from?
Well, I guess what's most troubling for us is the news of this broke on a Friday. And we as an organization said, well, we don't know where this came from. This could be a rogue bureaucrat just kind of misinterpreting because of their own personal beliefs within the department. So we waited until Monday to kind of issue our own alert to our people, giving the administration, the White House, a little bit of time to come out publicly saying, well, we didn't intend this, we're going to get this straightened out. Well, unfortunately, on that Monday, again, 2 or 3 days after the news broke, what we got was a doubling down effect out of the administration. This is exactly what that gun control bill requires. This is how we're interpreting that language, and we're sticking to our guns, pardon the pun, on this issue. So then we said, well, we've got to actually fully engage our people. We've got to develop all alternatives because, as you said, this will affect millions of children nationwide. This is not just, oh, well, not a big deal, nothing to see here. This is a massive amount of money that, think of our local schools. Look, they get funding from all sources, right? Their object is to help children and youth within those schools develop the right skills, develop their mental health, responsibility, etc. We can't just pick and choose what type of programs we think a school should avail itself of. Let the schools decide how to spend federal money. And if they decide hunter education or archery is a great thing to do, great, let's do it. So that's when we decided, after the administration did not take the opportunity to say, whoops, this was a mistake, right? We're going to reinterpret. That's not what was meant. And we decided to kind of get everything on the table and move forward with all of our options.
You know, it's interesting to me as I did some reading to prepare for the show today. I didn't realize how much of a sort of a national debate or discussion that was going on around whether kids should be taught gun safety or not. I found editorials that a number of them actually around teaching kids gun safety. Because you hear it all the time. Kids come up on a gun, they don't know what to do with it. They accidentally shoot somebody, and it's just a terrible tragedy. I can actually see a bureaucrat within the guise of archery or sort of shooting clays, for example, and looking at a program that we would have here in Mississippi and say, say, we're teaching kids to shoot a gun? That's the last thing we need to be doing. I mean, I can literally hear a bureaucrat saying that, not realizing that the good that comes from that, and that once you teach that kid's going to bring that safety aspect of what they're learning and the ethics of outdoorsmanship into their lives. But of course, they can't see any of that. They just see the fact that we're teaching a kid to shoot a gun, and that's all. That they stop right there and say, we're going to end this.
Yeah, and it's the unfortunate reality with fewer and fewer Americans actually engaging in all of these wonderful outdoor traditions we have, because, again, it's one of those things, you know it when you see it. But if you think about how you and I and our children and our grandchildren approach all of these questions, they're actually well informed. And among those things they're well informed about is how you properly handle a firearm, how you properly handle a bow and arrow, right? How you properly think about those issues, right? And of course, to us, gun safety is obvious. Well, yes, of course, we teach young people how to properly handle secure, etc., firearms and bows and arrows and everything else under the sun. But to some nameless bureaucrat or set of bureaucrats, that they might have grown up in a really urban environment, and the only exposure to these things is the nightly news and terrible tragedies. It's super unfortunate. We have a lot of problems that kind of follow along the reduction of hunter numbers in this country, but this is just one of them.
It's amazing. So when you look at the organizations that are all focused on, and you said, man, it does take a village, the organizations that are focused on sort of preserving our outdoor heritage in the United States, I would assume that they're all pretty worked up about this.
They are. And in fact, I just attended a meeting out in Montana. 30 or 40 organizations were actually there. Everybody's charged up about it. So we were very thankful. We've partnered up very directly with Safari Club International on this one, another group that kind of sees as among their central missions to go ahead and take care of the people, not just the conservation. But I can't think of a single group that said, oh, this is a wonderful idea. We all see the terrible tentacles from this type of thinking. And again, for me, and sometimes even teachable moments, the students never listen. When you walk into the room to talk about gun control efforts, you have to be really careful. Now, I've learned that over 30 years, right? Arguing about gun issues and gun policy at the state and national levels, it is always the unintended consequences that you're gonna have to pay the freight on those. This one is very massive. Everybody is very excited about it. So we're, in a way, very proud to bring this demand letter. And you bet sure you know what, that we're going to sue the Department of Education, because this is one of those kind of paradigm issues. No, this is what we do in a lot of communities.
Todd Aiken, Vice President of Governmental Affairs for the Sportsman Alliance. It's always good to catch up with you, and we're going to stay in touch with you. You kind of have your finger on the pulse of what's happening in the world of laws and direction as it relates to the wonderful United States of America, and I appreciate having you on the show, my friend.
I love being here. I appreciate you.
It's good to see you. Hey, we're going to have Andrew Arnett, who's actually the new head of the Alligator program in Mississippi. That's going to be a fun conversation. We'll see you after this.
I'll carry on, Mississippi.
Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. I enjoyed that conversation with Todd Aikens, and you can tell that the national organizations focused on hunting and outdoor enjoyment are locked and loaded on that particular issue. And as Todd said, they're intending to file a lawsuit against the U.S. Department of Education. And you know what we talked about during the break was, it's an election year. The last thing you want to do is get the outdoors community worked up about something like this. So hopefully they can resolve it without having to go to court, but we shall see. Hey, listen, if I look back in time, so many amazing guests that I've had on the show. One that I've really enjoyed getting to know was Ricky Flint. Ricky was head of the Alligator program for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. And then as we fought for a couple of years to get the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund here in Mississippi that was signed into law last year by Governor Reeves, Ricky Flint actually went over to the program, the Outdoor Stewardship Trust program, and now is sort of the administrator of that program. They've got a great board of directors, a board of trustees that is working. They've done their first distribution of funds, and they're off to the races. So a lot of good success is happening there. But Ricky was super passionate about the the alligator program in Mississippi. And I always enjoy talking alligators because I live on Back Bay in Biloxi, and we get alligators from time to time, and it's just fascinating. Of course, up in the Mississippi Delta at our property up there, our farms up there, we have alligators there too. So it's important to learn about alligator management, and one of the most successful programs in the United States is right here in Mississippi. Well, I've been curious who took Ricky's spot, and I'm pleased to bring to the show now Andrew Arnett, who is the sort of the new alligator program dude, and someone who has a terrific background. I look forward to sharing his background with you here shortly. But before we go any further, let me just welcome Andrew to Super Talk Outdoors. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. So where are you sitting right now, Andrew?
I am in Ricky Flint's old cubicle, actually.
Are you really? Good for you. Good for you. Listen, and looking at your past, you like so many others that work around you, went to Mississippi State. You got a degree in wildlife science, and you got into sort of wildlife management as a biologist, and then you were hired as a conservation associate biologist and then a conservation officer. You've got a great background. But what I found interesting about your background is that we all learn the outdoors from our family. We all have generations usually that are engaged in teaching us a love of the outdoors. In your case, you actually got to know your great grandfather, and he was a trapper. And you learned the love of the outdoors from him, others in your family as well, but you have great memories about spending time with your great grandfather. Tell me more about that. That's a great story.
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough, my great grandfather, Mr. Harry Tabor, lived a great life to about 94, 95 years old. He scaled logs for GP, and he also trapped for GP. And growing up in grade school, I used to go out there and stay with him and my grandmother during the wintertime and run trap lines with him. And my parents would beg me to come home Christmas Eve so I could be with, my siblings and them, obviously, for Christmas morning. And then as soon as present time was over with, great granddaddy would come back and pick me up. And he also, after he retired from GP, he row crop farmed out there and sold his crops by the bushel. So I stayed out there in the summertime as well. And my great grandmother, she fattened me up one summer. So eating biscuits and honey from right there off the farm and everything we grew. So,
listen, Adam Butler and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago. My mother, unfortunately, passed away 3 weeks ago. And in the conversation with Adam, it hit me that something that Adam shared was really kind of my story, too. It sounds like it was your story. It's your story, too. But in my case, and in Adam's case, it was our mothers who let us go roam. They let us go out and we fell in love with the outdoors, and they trusted us to go and roam. And Adam told the story of his father actually finding a map that Adam drew up early in his life of the areas where he used to go roam. And they unfolded the map, and his dad said, "Lord, have mercy. If I'd have ever known you were going that far, I would have never let you go." But it sounds like you got hooked really early. And
I did.
You were blessed to have parents that did let you roam, and in this case with your great grandfather. But gosh, man, those were formative years for you, weren't they?
They were. He sold his hide, obviously, and he was almost a surgeon with a knife. He knew how to skin anything, and he taught me how to skin critters and how to catch mink, otter, beaver, bobcat. So I got hooked early. I really did. He wasn't much of a deer hunter. Of course, he was old school. He liked to protect his crops, but his passion was trapping. And now my grandfather, he loved to deer hunt, so I got to learn that part of and the outdoors from him. And my great granddaddy, he was just a true woodsman, and that's all it was to it.
So as an adult, what's your favorite outdoor activity these days?
I don't get to trap as much as I'd like to. I don't have as much of it around where I live now. So my passion nowadays is spending time with my two youngins and bow hunting.
Yeah, I tell you what, I had the opportunity to hunt with a friend of mine named Clay Wagner for many, many years. My sons and his sons were really good friends. And I got to know a man who is just an amazing man. His name is Bill Howe. And gosh, man, Bill, I always said about Bill that he was a man with 9 lives because he had so many close calls in his life. It's amazing that he's still alive today. But one of the fun things my sons like to do is go out with Bill and check Bill's traps. And the time that my sons spent with Bill Howe out roaming the woods, checking traps, was some of the coolest times in their lives. But it's not about checking the traps for the most part. It's about that time that you're spending just learning about nature and just being out there and making it all make sense to you. I mean, that's incredible opportunity you had as a child, isn't it?
It is.
So, okay, so you joined the department and you've had a terrific career. Ricky had been there over 30 years. How long have you been there now?
I've been with the agency for a total of 11 years now. 2 of those being on contract.
Yeah, it's an incredible time that you've had there. At what point did you start sort of leaning toward alligators as something you're fascinated with?
Probably ever since I worked at Nanawaya WMA and watched alligators hatch every year. There was a female. She always used this specific beaver pond that was just, they had a dam that blocked up a drainage on the Pearl River system. And this would have been the upper Pearl River system in Neshoba County. And she nested there every year. And I got to see that. And I watched them every year. She would go to the same nest. And I mean, she would hatch out at least 12 to 16 every year right there. And most of them would survive.
Wow, that's incredible. Alligators are pretty darn resilient creatures, aren't they?
They really are.
So, so when you came into this, our program, as I said, is one of the better programs in the United States. That's had tremendous success. You had a program that you could walk into and begin to make an immediate impact. That had to have been fun to just hit the ground running.
It has been. It's also been, I wouldn't say stressful, but it has been wide open from the get-go because I've had to catch myself up to speed of what's going on in the program. And, I didn't get to have any grooming or anything. So it was just kind of like, okay, let's hit the ground running. Let's figure this out. And with I came in May the 1st, and as soon as I come in, I didn't really have any time to breathe or anything because we had the new Pelahatchie Bay alligator season that come in this year. And that was the first 2 weekends that I was in this position. So wasn't no breathing time for the first month or two, especially with the public waters alligator draws coming up really immediately after the Pelahatchie Bay season was over with. So,
yeah, the Pelahatchie, actually, the last time that Ricky and I visited in his official capacity with the alligator program, we talked in detail about that. When we come back on the other side, we'll actually talk about how that went, and we'll talk about the upcoming alligator season. Man, Ricky was all over this state. Man, I remember, there are lots of activity as it relates to alligators in the state of Mississippi. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Andrew Arnett. We'll see you after this.
I said, one Mississippi, there's a magnolia tree. 2 Mississippi, where a mockingbird sings out on his limb, whistling that sweet soul for him. I said, 3 Mississippi, to this land called home. I'll breathe Mississippi till I'm dead and gone. Just carry on. I'll carry on. Mississippi.
We live in one of the best places in America to enjoy the outdoors. So let's talk about it. It's Super Talk Outdoors with Ricky Matthews on Super Talk Mississippi.
It's kudzu walls and fall football.
Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. I have my friend Andrew Arnett, who is the new head of the alligator program for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. And as he mentioned, when he came into this job, while the program was well established, he didn't have the chance to work under Ricky for a period of time. So he had to hit the ground running. Almost immediately, he had to get to work because there was a special alligator season that had been launched. And tell us about how that went, by the way.
The season went good. I would have loved to have seen more alligators harvested off of Pelahatchie Bay, obviously, but there was a total of 22 alligators harvested during those 2 weekends between the permitted hunters. There was a potential of, I think it was 48 that could have been harvested, but we just didn't get that.
So we got alligator season coming up. Give us the dates, and let's remind people about the requirements in terms of how to go about catching an alligator.
Okay. Yeah, the public water season for the state of Mississippi opens August the 25th at noon and runs through September the 4th at noon. There are 4 legal capture type methods, one of them being bow fishing equipment. Now, with that bow fishing equipment, you have to use the bow fishing style tips, and it has to be attached to some type of line and buoy. You can't use regular broadheads or any explosive type tips. If you do use bow fishing equipment, if you stick an alligator with the bow fishing equipment, that particular alligator has to be reduced to the bag limit. You can't release those. You have your snatch hooks that can be hand thrown or rod and reel. The harpoon or a snare, whether it be a hand snare or a pole type snare. Those are your 4 capture methods for alligators here in Mississippi.
Yeah, what's important, and Ricky always was quick to point this out, that some people think they can shoot an alligator and then go over there and catch it, but the reality is you have to hook it first and bring it to the side of the boat, and then what's the method for shooting it?
Okay, so there's 2 different methods. You can have a shotgun, and these are shoulder fired shotguns, no sawed off things or anything like that. And you have to use number 6 shot or smaller. So example, number 6, 7, 8, 9 shot. Or you can use a bang stick chambered in a 38 caliber or larger. That's the only 2 dispatch techniques that we have here in Mississippi.
Yeah, so it's a big, especially if you use if you catch one with a big rod and reel and snag it, and then if it's a big boy, you're in for the fight of your life. I mean, it's a pretty exciting process, isn't it?
It's an adrenaline rush.
To say the least, huh?
To say the least.
So, what's the biggest alligator you've been around in terms of being part of sort of catching one?
Tagged a 9'10" female about a month ago.
Yeah, last year we weren't there when it was gotten, but in our lake there was a 14-foot one caught. It was absolutely gigantic. It was ancient. It had been in this lake for a very, very long time. It wasn't as heavy as you would expect. It was kind of skinny. I guess as they get older, maybe they get a little skinnier, or maybe it depends on what kind of food they have access to. But we've been around a lot of alligators, and there are a lot of alligators in this state, aren't there?
There are.
So, if you were to talk about the health of the alligator population, how do you talk about it?
We have a strong, healthy population here in Mississippi, and I had some plans for the future of the program. I want to do some more studying and actually looking at the population and whatnot.
So, okay, are you guys still tagging and still aggressively trying to understand what kind of ranges alligators operate in and other information? Is tagging still a big part of what you're doing?
It is. I didn't get to do as much this year since I was so busy and trying to learn this position, and with all the draws going on and not getting to step into this position till May. But next year I'm looking up to amp up our tagging program and maybe branch out to other parts of the state this year.
Hey, do you have a sense of illegal alligator hunting? How many people are engaged in illegal alligator hunting, and typically how do you learn about that?
I don't know, but most of our complaints on that come from Southeast.
Yes.
I don't know exactly how much of it is going on, but that's generally where most of those complaints come from.
Well, listen, we're coming to the end of our time together. I look forward to chatting with you again, Andrew, when you've been in the position for a while, and we'll check on how this alligator season went. Good luck to you, my friend. You've got a great background. You're going to be terrific in this new job.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
You bet. This has been Andrew Arnett from the Alligator Program for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. Listen, have a great week. We'll see you next Monday. Always stay safe when you're in the outdoors, especially these days as hot as it is. And God bless you. We'll see you later.